Awesome.
That's so cool. I feel like I'm gonna look at websites differently now, knowing like this back end stuff of how, it came to be. That's very interesting.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Wissam from Coding Virgins. It's the show where we code with non coders. And of course, we don't just write code, but we also discuss other topics like tech, business, and lifestyle. Today, I'm joined by Olivia Mancuso. Olivia is a former television journalist turned writer and marketing consultant. As a journalist, she covered major stories like the 2016 US presidential election and Hurricane Irma. After leaving the news business, she held multiple roles in corporate marketing before starting her own business where she helps brands define their voice through authentic storytelling. Hi, Olivia. Welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to see you. Nice to be here.
Great. How are you doing? What have you been up to since last time we spoke?
Just a lot of working, and it's finally getting warm in Chicago after 9 months of winter, pretty much. So being able to go outside and walk my dog and not freeze has been really nice.
Probably not the first thing I would ask, but you used to be a TV reporter on the news, right? It's not a very common profession. How does one become a TV reporter on the news? Is this something that you always wanted to be, or?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was. Ever since I think I was probably 13 years old, I wanted to be a news reporter. So, I went to journalism school and then landed my first job. My first job was in the state of Iowa. I don't know if you know anything about Iowa. There's a lot of cornfields. It's a very rural, like lots of
Yeah,
land, not
it's
very
pretty quiet
interesting.
over there.
Yeah, quiet. But a lot of weird crime happened there. I reported on a lot of weird crime, but you kind of start in a smaller market and work your way up. But it's a lot of work. A lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of overtime that you don't necessarily get paid for, which is classic in America. Get a lot of, wage theft.
Hmm.
But, I got to do a
Hmm.
lot of cool things and I covered the entire 2016 presidential election. I interviewed every single person who was running for president during that time. So I've been part of a lot of historic events. So
Interesting.
yeah, now I'm not doing it anymore in the traditional sense. I'm, like I said, freelancing and I've had some gigs doing, reporting for like the MMA, cage side interviewing fighters. I've done some other gigs for like events, but those are kind of one-off things. And I just like it better because I can control my hours and my schedule
Hmm.
now.
So let me ask you something. So in this show, we love technology, we love software. What role does technology play in your life? Back when you were a TV reporter for the news, but also now as a freelance consultant and educator.
One thing that might surprise people about the news business is that reporters shoot all of their own video for the most part. Unless you work for a big network, the reporters that are out doing local news are shooting their own video, editing their own video, sending it back to the studio from a remote location. And I had to learn how to troubleshoot everything on the fly. I mean, like when I was out in Iowa, I would be out in just middle of nowhere, and I would have to send back, a 3-minute video to my station, and 20 minutes before broadcast, and I would have to figure out how to make that happen, which was not very easy. And learning a lot of things just on the job, kind of as they happen, like different problems would arise, and I would have no choice but to figure it out. So I got really good at shooting and editing, and even more so, like I said, troubleshooting and just figuring out, um, just very last minute decisions, making things work. So, yeah, technologies can be frustrating, but I had to learn how to use it in a high pressure environment.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And this is a very interesting point, Olivia, because what you just described is a use case where uploading video can be a matter of life or death, right?
Mhm.
It's funny because we were just discussing this the other day. We had a user testing session for one of my
Mhm.
clients. A user testing session basically is if you have a product, in our case, it was a web app, you invite a group of people who never used your product before, and you get them to use your product, interact with it, so you can get some feedback. The idea being you can use that feedback to draw some conclusions and use those conclusions to eventually improve your product. And been in so many of these testing sessions. And something that stuck out to me as a creator is that once you create a product, you build something and you put it out in the world, you can never be 100% sure of how the user is going to end up using your product on the other
Right.
end. And this doesn't just apply for tech or TV or news or whatever, it applies for everybody. Once you create or build something, you put it out in the world,
Yes.
you can never envision all the use cases in which the user is going to end up using your product. That example you described, that piece of technology that is responsible for recording, saving, and uploading that video, of course, can be used for leisure and entertainment purposes, but it can also make a difference between footage, making it out of a war zone or a crime scene, and getting in front of the viewers or not.
Exactly.
Okay, so I hate to do this to you, but I'm going to pull something out from your Instagram account and I'm going to ask you to comment on it, okay?
Oh yeah, there I am.
Okay, what's going on here?
Yeah. That video ended up on the BBC, surprisingly, because there was trees coming out of the ground and flying across the
Wow,
sky.
that's
So
that's crazy.
basically, that
Yeah.
was right as Hurricane Irma, which was a hurricane that hit the Gulf Coast of Florida in 2017. That was minutes before like the eye of the storm came, right? And you want to talk about technology and communication? Oh my God. So usually newscasts are structured where like you have a slot, you're going in that slot, and then that's it. There's no structure when it comes to a hurricane because the producers are just, we have like these earpieces and they're talking to you and saying, okay, you go, you go, you go, and you're just communicating with them saying there's something crazy over here. All, rules, traditional rules are thrown out the window. And so I was at I was stationed at the Emergency Operations Center in my county. I covered a whole county. I was what was called a bureau reporter. And so, I was in a really safe place because that building has Category 5 hurricane shutters. So, super safe place, but I had stepped outside because I was like, "Hey, like the storm is going to come through here. Like the eye of the storm is going to come through here at any minute. Do you want one more quick, live shot outside before we all have to go inside?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Well, I could barely hear the producer in my ear because, there's massive wind and chaos. And so I'm listening and I'm listening. And what that clip doesn't show, so I did my live shot. What that clip doesn't show, I have the full version, I think, on my YouTube, is the chief meteorologist, Jim Farrell. Love him. He's he's yelling at me saying, "Olivia, get inside now." And he's doing this live on TV. It's like a very raw and real moment because he was trying to tell me that the hurricane was much closer than we anticipated. So like, yeah, I put my life in extreme danger, but I was right by a door. There was literally a line of firefighters next to me. So like I was in the best case scenario, should anything have happened. But yeah, that clip, made it on the BBC. It made it on like the Today Show because there was literal trees getting uprooted and like flying like if you've ever seen Wizard of Oz, like it was like a scene from Wizard of Oz. Yep. I still can't believe some days that like that used to be my life. Just it's very weird to look back at.
Yeah, that's crazy. And you know what's even more crazy is that as you were going through that story, which is obviously insane, as you were going through that story, I could tell that you've been in even more dangerous situations in the past.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Talk about dangerous. I mean, I've had gunshots fired behind me, like while I was, and that's nothing to laugh about, but it is just kind of crazy that, reporters go out in these insane situations, but when you have a job to do, you're kind of just like in the zone, and then you don't think about it till later, like, oh my God, I was just a tree could have just smacked me in the head. Like it could have knocked me out on live TV. Thank God it didn't.
Okay, so if we understand correctly, being a TV reporter was something you always wanted to do ever since you were a teenager. So you went through the experience now of being in front of camera, being part of the action, breaking the news to people. But now, and then you realized, okay, this is not for me anymore. This is not my dream anymore. I want something else. Just speaking with people in general, this is something that happens. This is very common, where people start a new job or a new career, and they spend some time on it. It can be months, can be years. Then they realize that this is not what they expected, or it's not matching what they wanted in life. But usually they don't quit until something drastic happens, right? There must be a breaking point that tells them, okay, now it's time to leave. No more. I don't want this anymore. So, what was this breaking point for you?
I actually have a story, and I've told this a couple times, and it's the story of essentially my breaking point when I decided I couldn't do it anymore. Um, so I was, it was starting to build up that I realized that there was a lot of things about the industry that I found troublesome and that I didn't want to be a part of. But what happened was one day I was reporting on a story, and I was the only reporter there because I happened to be close by and I heard it on the scanner, the police scanner that we had to carry around. There was two men who were roommates, and they were in their 60s or 70s. They were both using walkers. They weren't very mobile. Anyway, their home was struck by lightning and it caught on fire, and the home was destroyed. And yeah, that happened a lot in Florida because I was a reporter in Florida and there's a lot of, bad storms there. And so I headed over to the scene. Fire department was on the scene. The two men were okay, but their homes were destroyed. They had all these medications in there that were destroyed. They were just very distraught and didn't know what to do. And so they decided to speak with me. And my whole goal of the story was to make sure that people can send donations, food, clothing, money, help them get whatever they need. And I was very excited to put the story on the airs because I wanted to help them. So, you know, I'm about to go on the 10 o'clock news. It was about 9 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear something on the
Mm-hmm.
scanner that there was like one car, like it was a singular rollover crash, they call it. So one car rolled over, person was fine. They walked out. They just, their car kind of went into a ditch. It was a very desolate road. Nobody was there. So there was no like blocked traffic or anything. It was fine. It was not a story. And so I ignored it because no one was hurt. It was all good. And I didn't want to leave the story that I had planned on doing. And so about 10 minutes later, I get a call from my producer and he said, "Hey, did you not hear about that crash? You need to go to that." And I said, "Yeah, but it's nothing. I mean, it's not news. The person walked away. There's no block traffic. It's fine." Well, he forced me to go because he had that seniority over me. And I had to abandon the story about the men that I thought was really important to tell their story to get them help. Um, they still ran it, but a very short
Mm-hmm.
version compared to what
Mm-hmm.
it was supposed to be. And I ended up doing my live shot, we call it. That's, the location where I go live. I ended up doing my live shot on this dark, buggy road with an abandoned vehicle. It made no sense. And I felt stupid. Like, why am I here telling people that there's an abandoned car on an abandoned road where nobody was hurt. And so that had happened to me so many times before, but for some reason it was that night that like was the final straw. And I went home, and my husband was just my boyfriend at the time, and I like laid on the ground and just stared at the ceiling for like half an hour, and he's like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was like, "I gotta leave. I can't do this anymore." And so the next day I started my job search process, and it took about 2 months to secure a new job. And I was heartbroken because I put my heart and soul into that career, and I wanted to do it since I was 13, like I said. So coming to terms with the fact that I had to leave was really tough, but I realized that I could use my talents in other ways, still help people, still tell people stories. So I don't regret the decision at all.
Yeah. No, I understand. I can imagine what you went through. Yeah, to me it seems like for you growing up there was
Exactly.
this idea that being a reporter or being part of this community was all about helping people and making people's voices heard. And then you end up working for these dickheads that pretty much, force you to prioritize some meaningless clickbait stories over stories that actually matter, right? Yeah, and this happens a few times, and then you realize that the whole business or the whole industry functions that way. Correct?
Exactly. It's tough because I obviously want to defend journalists who are doing great work, and that's the majority of them. The problem, from my perspective, from being on the inside, is not, I don't even blame the producer who made me do that. I blame the station owners who push for the clickbait bait. They're the ones whose philosophies get trickled down throughout the newsroom, and the management has to enforce whatever the station owners say. And so, do I think that executive producer who made me do that do I think he thought it was a better story? No, I don't. But he has pressure from people higher up than him telling him, make sure you get, the sexiest story, whatever that means. And so but then the problem is that we're the ones on TV, so we get blamed because we're the visible ones. So I had, a lot of people blame me for things when it's like stuff
Mm,
was out of my control,
yeah, definitely, definitely. Hmm. Yeah. So about that project I mentioned before, I'm building this little web app for a friend of mine. I'm gonna get you to help me with it a little bit later. We're gonna be doing a little bit of programming, a little bit of coding together later on. Um, you accepted to come on the show, so don't tell me I didn't warn you, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, but before we do, yeah, so this project is for a friend of mine who runs a software development company. Basically, they build websites and mobile apps for clients, and he recently purchased this office space, and he wants to have a reservation system for it. Um, why? Because at his company they fully adopted this hybrid way of working, which means that you don't have to come to the office 5 days a week every week, right? You can have regular days at the office. You can only come on a per need basis. People have different arrangements, but what this created is that since you now don't have fixed seating and fixed space for everybody, uh, on days where a lot of people come to the office,
Mhm.
we end up in these situations where some rooms are double booked. Um, People don't have desks to work from, etc. So reservation system makes sense, um, and also this hybrid work or hybrid way of working really makes sense for his case because um, software development or working as a software developer is very compatible with hybrid and remote work because uh, you can pretty much do a lot of the stuff that you need to do from the comfort of your own home because you can just do a lot of it from your computer. And that's part of the reason why recently a lot of people are drawn to this type of work. And yeah, so from your perspective, I know that you've been a reporter, and I know that you work in the field outside of the office a lot of times. But I'm curious to hear what it's like in a TV news environment. Does everybody need to be at the office except reporters, or how does it work exactly?
Yeah, it depends on the job. Producers who actually put on the newscast can do their jobs from home. I know the majority of them are back now, but they were doing that from home for a while. But like audio engineers, where there's, massive equipment that helps broadcast, live, they have to be in studio because you can't take like $100,000 worth of massive equipment and bring it home with you. So,
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. So back to my side project, like I mentioned before, it's a prototype for a office reservation system, right? I got started on this actually a couple of weeks ago, and what I'm showing you here is the beginning stages. And surprise, surprise, no code. Okay, there's no code here. It's just a simple Excel sheet. And it's like people think that as soon as you get an assignment or a project or an idea, then you just go on your keyboard and start coding away. And it's not exactly how it works, especially when you do this professionally, right? There is a few steps that need to take place before coding happens. So what you see here is basically what we call a list of requirements. It's essentially a list of things that need to be built into the new system. I sat down with a few people from the company and we came up with this list. Now, I have to say that in most projects in real life, such a document in this format does not really exist. So, what you have instead in commercial projects, you have some sort of project management solution, and you have a backlog, which is a list of to dos in simple terms. And basically, it consists of features that need to be implemented, features that need to be retired, if improvements to be made, issues to be solved, etc. Um, but the reason I'm showing you this today is because, well, first of all, I'm using this because I'm working solo on this project. So it's okay. It's simple for me. I can track it. It's enough for my use case.
mhm.
But the other reason is because I think it's really important to talk about this. Um, Now, most educators in the tech field, what they do is they focus on the shiny part of tech, which is building awesome features and using flashy tech. And when you go to YouTube, the most popular videos are how do you use this new technology, or how do you, apply this concept from build a new app from start to finish for beginners, which is it's really useful. But if you're showing the shiny part, then you should also be showing the other part of the business, which is what we're talking about here today. Because look, you if you want to get into tech, you have to understand that there's two sides of the job. There's the technical part of the job, and there is the not technical part of the job. Because if you want to be here in tech for the long run, and you want to grow within the organization and make a career for yourself, you need to grow, right? And to grow, usually what's involved is that you need to be able to influence decisions and make an impact. In order to make an impact, basically in an organization, making an impact is comes down to adding things to the backlog and removing things to the backlog, right? And in order to do that, you need to have some conversations with people. You need to sit down with people. You need to be able to negotiate. You need to be able to have tough discussions at times. You need to talk to the right people the right way. Um, and in order to do that, you need to cultivate a different set of skills than what you see on those videos. This set of skills is what they call the soft skills, right? Which I don't like this term, but this is soft skills is like it comes down to uh, communication skills essentially.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, customer service means the difference of me working with you or somebody else, you have to be able to to be a team player and, you know, be likable. I would say the number one thing, I mean, obviously the written and oral communication, that's a given, but the number one thing is being resourceful. I was sometimes sent on impossible missions to, hey, do a story about this, but nobody would talk to me, or there was no good video to get. The story, whatever it was, happened at an empty building, and I just have to get shots of the outside of a building, which no one wants to look at. They'll tune that out. So I had to get creative. How can I visually create an interesting story, but I only have 3 hours to write, edit, and produce it? Or no one will talk to me, but they will talk to me off camera. How do I convince them to, give me an interview, but I won't get video of their face? I'll get video of their hands or get video of the back of their head. Like, so I just had to learn to be resourceful and very quick on my feet. And I think that that's served me well in my new venture and just life in general. I'm able to quickly pivot things in the direction that I needed to go. Um, and yeah, it was really stressful, but I would say that, there's obviously a lot of high stakes jobs out there. And news reporting is one of them. High stakes, high stress. Yeah.
Communication for me, and this is what I tell my mentees and my students, etc. What I tell them is it comes down to language.
I don't know if it's the same where you are, but a lot of people tend to make fun of reporters in the States because we have this way of speaking that is very official. And we say, our sentence is kind of funny. But it's interesting because reporters and journalists have been taught to use the simplest of terms possible. There's this idiom, keep it simple, stupid, the KISS principle. And that's super important in, the reporting world because you're talking to an audience of tens of thousands of people. So you don't want to use language that is not known or relevant or too complex for people who might not have English as their first language or, just are in different parts of the country. And so that's always been really interesting. I've always loved vocabulary and fun words, but as a journalist you have to keep it pretty simple. But then the other part of this is when you talk about me, how I work with clients. I do have a lot of clients where I do storytelling for them, whether that's written or I work on camera for them. And I think in marketing in particular, there's so many buzzwords and a lot of flashy things that don't actually mean anything. And so I tend to apply those same principles as a journalist. Like, I'm not trying to trick you and, make it sound like we're smarter than we actually are. You want to be relatable and not come off as inauthentic. And so, yeah, so when it comes to communication, it's just really important because it's very easy to seem unrelatable. And you don't want that because no one's going to want to buy from you if they can't relate to you.
So, generally speaking, in very broad terms, as a software developer, coding starts from your local machine, right? Your desktop or your laptop, right? So you code first on your computer, and then the code goes through a series of steps, and it ends up live to users. So it ends up live in the shape of a website, or if you're building an app, then it's Google Play or App Store or whatever it is. But the idea is code starts from your computer, right? And in order to be able to code on your computer, you need to set up what we call a local development environment, right? And that's just a fancy term for saying that you need to install a couple of things on your computer to be able to write code. And today I'm going to show you two of these tools. So, number one, this is what we call a terminal. It's this bad boy right here. Have you ever seen a terminal before? Yeah, probably in an action movie where they talk to the hacker and he's banging
Yeah,
keys on his
yeah.
keyboard, and all you can see is a black screen with characters on it. I'm not going to get too deep into what the terminal is and what it does, but just know that we use it a lot. And today I'm using it to run the code. And the second one is what we call a text editor or an IDE. You can think of this one like the Microsoft Word for code. And that's basically where this is basically where you type your code. Okay, and then the code is going to get later executed. But this is here where you type code, and I'm going to show you that in a second. Here on the left hand side, I have the Office booking app that I'm working on open, and you can also see here the project files. So far, so
Right.
good.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Okay, so let's run the code locally and see what we have so far. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my terminal and I'm gonna go ahead and type a couple of commands here. So I'm gonna run what we call a front end. And so it's running good. As you can see, there's no errors or anything like that. No red text. And now I'm gonna run the back end. Okay, I'm gonna explain what the front end and the back end are in a second. Whoops. Yeah, I think I have a typo here. Okay, so that should do it. Okay, I think it's running good. Okay, awesome. I think everything is going okay. Let's try and access the website from Google Chrome. All right, so there you go. This is what we have. Let me zoom up a little bit so you can see. And now, as at the top, you can see here that we have a sign in button. You can sign in with Google, your Google account. Okay, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sign in with my Google account, select my Google account, and then I'm redirected back. So, and you can see here that I'm logged in as myself. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Okay, so all of this is running from my machine locally, okay, locally from my machine. So, what I want to do now is I want to go to the dashboard. So, once I log in, once the user logs in, I want them to see a page where they have some options, like see what bookings they have, if they want to create a booking and stuff like that. So I want all of these options to be laid out in the dashboard page. So normally I will have a menu later on here to go access, but for now I'm just going to type the URL to it. And this is, so
Right.
slash dashboard will take me to the
Yeah.
dashboard page. This is what we have. Okay. So now let's try to find the file that is actually controlling this page. And to that, I'm going to go back to my editor. And as you can see here, there's a, if I drill down to the apps folder, I see a backend folder, a front end folder. This is what we talked about earlier. So the backend essentially is what generally what you don't see. So that's like the part of the system that is hosted on a server somewhere that controls your data, stores your data, performs like payment transactions, all these things that are not done in your browser or your computer or your machine. It's done remotely, right? So that's the backend. Okay, in general terms, this is what it is. The front end is the user interface that you're interacting with as a user. Okay, so this page actually is controlled via this file, dashboard, and I'm gonna go ahead and open it. And as you can see, it's a very small file, and the text that you see on the screen corresponds to the text you see there in that heading 3 element. And now we come to the fun, practical part, okay? So whenever you make changes to the code editor on the right in that file, your changes is going to reflect in the browser. Okay, so if you make a change on the right, shows up on the left. Okay, let's try it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Would love to.
Let's actually get you to try it
Yeah.
out. Okay, is this the first time for you touching code?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let me see if I can find you let me see if I can invite you here to this session. Okay, so if you can see my cursor,
I can.
yeah, you can just go to where my cursor is. Yeah, that's the file, and Yeah, and you can make a change, whatever you want.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to break anything. Seriously.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
okay, well, it's going to be very simple. Okay.
No, that's fine. Go ahead. Oh, it works. It works. Yes.
Yeah. Huh.
Awesome.
That's so cool. I feel like I'm going to look at websites differently now, knowing like this back end stuff of how, it came to be. That's very interesting.
Amazing. Um, I just wanted to point out really quickly that a lot of the files that you see here in the code editor, I haven't typed myself actually. It's been automatically generated.
That's what I was going to ask. So you just need to know where to put in your custom elements, but a lot of it's already pre-built out.
That's very very interesting observation. Yeah, well, look, we call them generators. So they you can quickly and easily generate projects from nothing. You get a in a few seconds, in a matter of seconds, you can get a whole project generated for you, and that cuts down on the time that you spend on writing repeated code. But on the other hand, you do need to understand uh, what the code does, what the files are doing behind the scenes, and it's not just a matter of changing elements and rearranging them. No, you do have to have some knowledge about logic and coding and all that. But the tools that we have nowadays, they have simplified the task so much more. Yeah,
Yeah. I guess I'm just interested to know. I mean, do you need to go to a 4-year degree or get a degree in this to be able to do this, or is it accessible to everybody?
that's a super good question again, and thanks for asking it. I think if you're looking to do this professionally, if you want to be a professional developer, there's a few options to choose from, right? Um, Option number one is that you do this independently, right? You can go online. There's a lot of resources. You can look for the technologies you're interested in, the languages, the programming languages, the frameworks, and all that. And then you can check what's in demand and so forth, what the companies are looking for. Does that match in your interest and skill levels, etc.? And then you can yourself try to devise some sort of program to teach yourself certain competencies that they're looking for. I do want to say that if you're doing this, if you're going with this
Hmm.
option, you do need to understand that, like with any other job, uh, companies and recruiters prefer people who have experience. Um, but what you can do also is that you can, you know, um, start some side projects where you apply these technologies, and that will help you on the one hand get better at the technologies, but also show what you can do. Show that you have the chops to do the
Hmm.
job that they're hiring for. That's option one, independent learning. Option two is you can follow a coding boot camp, or find a coding school that specialize. These generally specialize in in one technology or another, and these guys, like they have some really interesting. Some of them are really interesting. They have a lot of options that you can choose from in terms of length of the program, the technologies that you're interested in as well. And the advantage of doing that is that you have access to an instructor or a set of instructors. You have a peer group or a community to learn from, and get inspired from as well. So those are definitely positive things that you don't get just by working alone. I'm not saying that it's better. Obviously, different options are better for different people, but that's basically the idea. And they also, some of them help you get internship placements with companies because they have relationships with businesses as well. And so that's option two, coding boot camps or coding schools. And option three is, which is less common nowadays, I think, in my view. And option three, which is a little bit less common nowadays, at least from where I stand, is basically going to university and doing a computer science degree. I think people are doing that less and less. That's the path that I went down. That's the path that I did actually. Um, yeah, but that's and then you can get a then you can get a computer science degree or similar, and then I do want to say though that even though you get a computer science degree, during your studies you're not going to learn, you know, you're not going to always learn. Even if it's a computer science degree, you need to you need to be selective. um, I do have to say that if you do
Hmm.
this path, I do have to say if you go to university for this, you have to. Um, I do have to say that if you want to go to university and get a computer science degree, you need to. Um, I do have to say that if you want to go to university and get a 4 year degree for this, you need to be selective about what kind of program uh, is being, you know, offered. What are the courses that are being offered? Because just because you're studying computer science at school does not mean that you get automatically the skill set you need when you're getting an industry job, right? A lot of these courses out there uh, and programs, 4 year degrees, they're devised to keep you in academia. Like they want you to keep to go to a master's degree and PhDs and so forth. So if your goal is to get an industry job, then you need to be, you know, you need to check really well what they offer in those degrees.
Right.
So we're getting close to the end of today's show. All that is left to do is for you to tell people what's going on in your life.
Yeah, building the course, continuing to take on new clients, you know, for branding and storytelling. And you can find me on my website, which is olivia-mancuso.com. And then my Instagram, where I post a lot of like career tips and things like that, is Olivia Mancuso with 2 underscores.
Thanks for being on the show, Olivia. It's been a blast.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. It was awesome chatting with you today.